The abrasive hum of the laptop fan was the only sound in the dimly lit apartment, accompanied by the frantic, rhythmic clacking of keystrokes. The screen cast a harsh, blue light across Nora's face, illuminating eyes narrowed in cold, calculated fury. She hovered her cursor over a drop-down menu labeled Fecal Selection, a grim smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. The scent of freshly brewed jasmine tea broke her concentration just as warm, familiar hands settled onto her shoulders. Leo leaned over the back of her desk chair, his chin resting near her temple. He didn't ask why she was browsing a novelty website dedicated to shipping animal waste. He merely adjusted his glasses, squinted at the screen, and murmured, asking if they offered expedited shipping, because if they were going to do this, they might as well ensure it arrived fresh. Nora leaned back against his chest, the tension bleeding out of her spine as his thumbs dug into her tight muscles. That was the thing about Leo. He never told her she was overreacting. He never asked her to shrink her anger to make him comfortable. Instead, he simply asked how he could help her build the pyre. Nora sighed, a heavy, exhausted sound that seemed to scrape against the walls of their small, cross-country apartment. 3,000 miles away, her family was fracturing under the weight of a tyrant, and there was absolutely nothing she could do but watch through the warped lens of phone calls and text messages. The tyrant in question was Arthur, a man who possessed all the warmth of a morgue slab and the moral compass of a starving hyena. To the outside world, Arthur was a paragon of civic virtue. He was the principal of a prestigious middle school, a man whose suits were pressed to razor-sharp perfection, whose smile was blindingly white, and whose reputation was fiercely protected behind a barricade of expensive PR and calculated charm. But Nora knew the rot beneath the floorboards. She knew about the late-night screaming matches that rattled the windows of her Aunt Clara's house. She knew about the younger women, the quiet, devastating betrayals that Arthur waved away as mere misunderstandings, gaslighting Clara until she questioned her own sanity. And she knew about the bruises. The ones Arthur swore were accidents, the ones Clara covered with thick layers of foundation before attending school board galas on his arm, playing the perfect, adoring wife to preserve his immaculate public image. Leo pulled up a chair beside her, his knee resting against hers. He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles over her knuckles. The physical contact anchored her, pulling her back from the edge of a panic attack fueled by sheer, impotent rage. He asked her what the breaking point was, knowing full well she had been simmering for months. Nora pulled up a text thread on her phone, tossing it onto the desk. It wasn't the cheating that finally shattered Nora's restraint, nor was it the physical intimidation. It was Milo. Milo was Arthur and Clara's eldest son, a quiet, observant 9-year-old boy who carried the weight of his parents' crumbling marriage in the slump of his small shoulders. Lately, Clara had noticed a change. Food was disappearing from the pantry. Empty candy wrappers and discarded chip bags were found shoved deep beneath Milo's mattress, hidden like shameful secrets. When Clara finally sat him down, her voice soft and trembling, Milo had burst into tears, confessing that his stomach always hurt, but eating made the heavy, dark feeling in his chest go away for just a little while. He was eating to swallow his sadness. Clara, acting with the fierce, protective instinct of a mother desperately trying to salvage her child from the wreckage of her marriage, immediately enrolled Milo in therapy. It was a lifeline, a safe space for a little boy who was drowning in the unspoken tension of his own home. When Arthur found out, he didn't ask how his son was doing. He didn't ask what was causing the boy such profound distress. Instead, he cornered Clara in the kitchen, his voice a venomous hiss that Milo heard perfectly clearly from the top of the stairs. Arthur had thrown a spectacular, terrifying fit. He demanded to know what people would say. He ranted about his position, his authority. He was a principal. He was supposed to be shaping the minds of the youth. What would the school board think? What would the affluent parents in the neighborhood whisper behind their manicured hands if they found out he had a crazy kid who needed a shrink? He accused Clara of sabotaging his career, of humiliating him, of failing to control her own child. Nora recited this to Leo, her voice cracking, hot tears of frustration pricking her eyes. She felt entirely useless, trapped on the opposite side of the country, separated by time zones and expensive plane tickets. She couldn't drive over there and physically stand between her aunt and that monster. She couldn't hug her little cousin and tell him his feelings were valid. She could only sit in her apartment, suffocating on the injustice of it all. Leo didn't offer empty platitudes. He didn't tell her everything would be fine or that karma would eventually sort Arthur out. He reached across the desk, took the laptop, and firmly clicked the button for premium elephant dung. He looked at her, his dark eyes fierce and entirely serious. He told her that distance didn't mean powerlessness. He told her that sometimes the universe needs a little administrative assistance to deliver karma, and if she wanted to send a box of literal feces to a terrible man, he was going to buy the tracking number. Nora stared at him, a sudden, overwhelming wave of affection crashing through her. In a world where she had watched her aunt be belittled and destroyed by a partner who viewed her as an accessory, Leo's unwavering, chaotic support was a revelation. It wasn't just about the revenge, it was about the solidarity. He was stepping into the mud with her, ruining his own pristine hands just to make sure she didn't have to fight alone. They spent the next hour meticulously crafting the package. The website offered a variety of malicious add-ons. Leo, armed with his credit card and a mischievous, devastatingly attractive smirk, opted for the glitter bomb upgrade. Spring-loaded, fine-grade, iridescent glitter designed to lodge itself into every crevice, fabric, and carpet fiber it touched. An absolute nightmare for a man obsessed with a clean, controlled environment. Then came the message. The website allowed for a custom, printed card to be nestled right on top of the biohazard. They debated the wording, passing the keyboard back and forth, their shoulders bumping, laughing for the first time in days. They needed something short, vicious, and entirely accurate. Something that would pierce right through Arthur's bloated ego. Nora finally typed it out, her fingers striking the keys with lethal precision. No matter how much you try to make your image sparkle, you will always be a piece of shit. Leo read it over her shoulder, pressed a warm, lingering kiss against her neck, and hit submit. The following Tuesday felt longer than a leap year. Nora and Leo were both working from home, their laptops open on the kitchen island, but neither was paying attention to their spreadsheets or conference calls. Their eyes were glued to the secondary monitor displaying the shipping tracker. It had arrived at the local distribution center in Arthur's City at 4 a.m. By 9:30 a.m., it was out for delivery. Nora was vibrating with a mixture of anxiety and adrenaline. She paced the length of the kitchen, chewing on her lower lip. What if Clara intercepted it? What if Arthur just threw it away without opening it? Leo intercepted her pacing, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her flush against him. He rested his chin on the top of her head, swaying her gently side to side. He promised her that a narcissist like Arthur would never ignore a package addressed to him. A narcissist always assumes a box holds a gift, an accolade, something to feed their insatiable vanity. He would open it. At exactly 1:14 p.m. the tracker refreshed. Delivered, left with front desk receptionist. Nora gasped, clutching Leo's shirt. Arthur was at the school. He was in his domain, his kingdom of polished linoleum and hushed respect. The agonizing wait stretched into the late afternoon. The sun dipped below the city skyline, casting long, golden shadows across their apartment. They were in the middle of preparing dinner, chopping vegetables in a companionable silence, when Nora's phone buzzed violently against the marble countertop. It was a FaceTime request from Clara. Nora froze, the chef's knife hovering over a bell pepper. She looked at Leo, her eyes wide with panic. Had it backfired? Had Arthur taken it out on Clara? Leo wiped his hands on a towel, walked over, and answered the call, propping the phone up so they were both in the frame. Clara's face appeared on the screen. She was sitting in her car, parked in what looked like a grocery store lot. For a terrifying second, Nora thought her aunt was crying. Her shoulders were shaking, her face buried in her hands. But as Nora leaned closer, breathless with dread, Clara dropped her hands. Her face was bright red, her eyes streaming with tears, but she wasn't sobbing. She was laughing. It was a breathless, hysterical, soul-deep laughter that Nora hadn't heard from her aunt in over a decade. Clara struggled to catch her breath, waving a hand at the camera. She recounted the events of the afternoon in broken, gasping sentences. Arthur had received the box in his office. He had assumed it was a gift from the Parent-Teacher Association. He had called his secretary into the room to witness his grand unboxing, eager to show off whatever tribute he believed he was owed. He cut the tape. He lifted the flaps. The spring-loaded trap detonated with the force of a small firecracker. A massive, unavoidable cloud of fine, holographic pink and silver glitter exploded upward, coating Arthur's immaculate navy blue suit, his perfectly styled hair, and the pristine surfaces of his mahogany desk. But the glitter was only the prelude. The sudden rush of air released the vacuum-sealed scent of the main attraction. The pungent, gag-inducing odor of premium elephant manure flooded the small, unventilated office. Clara wiped tears of pure joy from her eyes as she described the phone call she received from the school nurse. Arthur had completely lost his mind. He had shrieked, a high, undignified sound that echoed down the hallway. He had thrown the box, causing the contents to spill directly onto his expensive leather shoes. In his blind panic to brush the glitter off his face, he had only smeared it deeper into his pores, looking less like a respected educator and more like a furious, deranged disco ball. The secretary had fled the room, gagging. The school resource officer had rushed in, thinking someone was under attack, only to find the principal stomping his feet in a pile of iridescent dung, screaming obscenities that were definitely not approved by the school board. Arthur's image was irrevocably shattered. The entire administrative staff had seen it. The rumors were already spreading through the teacher's lounge like wildfire. He had been forced to leave the building in the middle of the day, smelling like a zoo, his face sparkling with unrelenting pink glitter that refused to wash off. Clara looked through the screen, her expression softening into something incredibly tender. She didn't ask if Nora had done it. She just looked at her niece and then at Leo, who was standing tall and proud beside her. Clara whispered a quiet, profound thank you. She said that for the first time in years, Arthur looked small. He looked ridiculous. And seeing him reduced to a sparkling, foul-smelling tantrum had broken the spell of terror he held over her. She told them she was calling a lawyer in the morning. She was taking Milo and she was leaving. When the call ended, silence settled over the kitchen. Nora stared at the blank screen, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of relief and triumph. She turned to Leo. He was already looking at her, a soft, incredibly warm smile on his lips. He didn't gloat. He didn't demand recognition for his brilliant idea. He simply pulled her into a deep, bruising kiss. It was a kiss built on mutual respect, on the shared thrill of protecting those they loved, on the undeniable fact that they were a team against the world. Nora wrapped her arms around his neck, breathing in the clean, comforting scent of him, so starkly different from the toxic decay of the men she had grown up fearing. In that moment, surrounded by half-chopped vegetables and the fading evening light, Nora realized that romance wasn't just about candlelit dinners or whispered sweet nothings. True romance was finding a partner who would stand beside you in the trenches, armed with a credit card and a box of manure, ready to burn down the monsters in your closet. We often talk about cutting off toxic family members, about walking away for our own peace of mind. But sometimes, walking away isn't enough, especially when the vulnerable are left behind in the blast radius. Standing up to abusers, narcissists, and those who weaponize their image to hide their cruelty requires a specialized kind of courage. It requires the willingness to be utterly unbothered by their artificial authority. If you have someone in your life who brings out the worst in you, remember that their power is only an illusion, a fragile facade easily shattered by truth, or in this case, a well-timed glitter bomb. And more importantly, surround yourself with people who don't just tolerate your righteous anger, but who hold your hand while you unleash it. If you enjoyed this story of petty, beautiful revenge, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment with your own stories of taking down a toxic ego, and remember, no matter how much they try to make their image sparkle, the truth always smells a little funny.